A company can have documented policies, segregation of duties, automated approvals, and still lose millions without anyone noticing for months. The uncomfortable truth is this: internal controls rarely fail because they are missing. They fail because they are misunderstood, misaligned, or quietly bypassed. The real vulnerability in modern corporations is not the absence of controls. It is the illusion that controls alone create safety. Internal controls were designed to reduce risk, prevent fraud, and ensure financial accuracy. In theory, they create structure and accountability. In practice, they operate inside complex systems shaped by incentives, pressure, hierarchy, and technology. This matters now more than ever. Modern corporations operate in distributed environments, rely heavily on automation, and move money and data at speed. A single breakdown can result in financial loss, regulatory penalties, reputational damage, and long-term erosion of trust. The question is no longer whether controls exist. It is whether they function as intended under real-world conditions. Structural weakness, hidden in plain sight. Most control frameworks are logically sound. Segregation of duties, approval thresholds, reconciliations, access reviews, audit trails. On paper, they appear robust. Failure often begins when these controls are implemented mechanically rather than strategically. For example, a procurement process may require 2 approvals above a certain dollar threshold. That appears strong. But if both approvers report to the same executive and operate under aggressive cost or delivery pressure, independence becomes superficial. The structure exists. The challenge function does not. Controls fail when organizations design them for compliance rather than for resistance. A control that is easy to override in practice is not a control. It is a formality. In many corporate fraud cases, post-incident reviews reveal that the required approvals were technically obtained. The documentation was complete. The system logs were intact. Yet no one meaningfully questioned the transaction. The breakdown was not procedural. It was behavioral. Over-reliance on automation. Modern corporations increasingly depend on automated workflows. Automated journal entries, automated access provisioning, automated exception reporting. Automation improves efficiency. It reduces manual error. But it also creates a psychological shift. When systems appear sophisticated, people assume they are reliable. This is known as automation bias. Individuals trust system outputs even when anomalies exist. Consider a financial reporting process where reconciliations are auto-generated. If the reconciliation report shows no exceptions, reviewers may spend seconds rather than minutes validating underlying data. The act of review becomes ceremonial. Over time, organizations begin to trust dashboards more than judgment. When automated controls are poorly configured, outdated, or built on incorrect assumptions, failures propagate silently. Unlike manual errors, system errors scale. The result is not one incorrect entry. It is systemic distortion. Control fatigue and normalization. Internal controls add friction. They slow processes, require documentation, and demand review. In fast-paced environments, friction is often perceived as inefficiency. Teams begin to look for shortcuts. An approval that once required detailed justification becomes a quick email confirmation. A review that once involved scrutiny becomes a checklist exercise. Exception reports are acknowledged but not investigated. This is not necessarily malicious. It is adaptive behavior under pressure. Over time, organizations normalize deviations. Small exceptions become routine. When nothing bad happens immediately, confidence increases. Until something does happen, control fatigue reduces vigilance. The more frequently individuals are required to perform compliance tasks that rarely detect issues, the more likely they are to disengage cognitively. Controls become rituals rather than defenses. Misaligned incentives. One of the most underestimated drivers of control failure is incentive structure. If performance metrics emphasize revenue growth above all else, Individuals may rationalize bypassing control steps to close deals faster. If cost reduction is prioritized aggressively, oversight functions may be under-resourced. In some environments, risk and compliance teams are positioned as obstacles rather than partners. This creates subtle adversarial dynamics. When the organization rewards speed, output, and short-term results, control adherence can feel like personal disadvantage. Even strong ethical individuals are influenced by context. Under pressure, rationalization becomes easier. No one sets out intending to undermine controls. But when incentives reward outcomes that conflict with control discipline, erosion begins quietly. The illusion of segregation. Segregation of duties is a foundational internal control principle. No single individual should initiate, approve, and record a transaction. In modern corporations, however, access rights often accumulate over time. Role changes, temporary overrides, project-based access extensions. Over months or years, individuals can acquire conflicting permissions without triggering concern. Periodic access reviews exist to detect this. But if reviewers lack deep understanding of system roles, approvals may be rubber-stamped. On paper, segregation exists. In reality, system configurations tell a different story. Remote and hybrid work models add complexity. Oversight becomes more dependent on system monitoring rather than physical presence. Informal observation disappears. This increases reliance on technical controls, which must be actively maintained and validated. Without rigorous access governance, the illusion of segregation persists long after practical independence has eroded. Escalation. The deeper risk. The most significant danger is not isolated fraud. It is systemic blindness. When internal controls fail quietly, organizations lose not just money, but signal detection capacity. Early warning indicators are missed. Small anomalies that could have been corrected escalate into material issues. Leadership often discovers failures retrospectively, during audits, regulatory reviews, or crisis events. At that stage, remediation is reactive and expensive. There is also reputational risk. Investors, regulators, and customers assume that internal control systems reflect disciplined governance. When failures become public, confidence deteriorates quickly. The deeper risk is cultural. If employees observe that controls are symbolic rather than enforced, norms shift. What was once unacceptable becomes negotiable. Control systems do not fail in isolation. They fail within culture. Practical insight. What most organizations misunderstand. Many organizations treat internal controls as a compliance obligation rather than a dynamic risk management system. Controls must be stress-tested. They must be challenged. They must be examined under scenarios of pressure, collusion, system failure, and incentive conflict. Periodic reviews that confirm documentation exists are insufficient. Effective control environments require three elements: structural design, behavioral reinforcement, and continuous validation. Structural design ensures the right separation and oversight exist. Behavioral reinforcement aligns incentives and leadership tone with control integrity. Continuous validation tests whether controls operate as intended under changing conditions. Technology can support this, but it cannot replace judgment. For professionals, this means asking harder questions. Not whether a control exists, but whether it would realistically prevent or detect a meaningful breach. Not whether approvals are obtained, but whether they are substantive. For leaders, it means recognizing that culture determines whether controls are respected or bypassed. Internal controls are not barriers. They are reflections of organizational values in operational form. Strong closing. Internal controls do not fail suddenly. They erode gradually, often invisibly, under the weight of pressure, automation, and complacency. Modern corporations do not suffer from a shortage of policies. They suffer from overconfidence in them. The strength of a control environment is not measured by the thickness of its documentation, but by its resistance to human pressure and systemic complexity. In the end, internal controls are not about process. They are about trust. And trust, once compromised, is far harder to restore than any balance sheet.